you give me a drink?" This shocked her because the Samaritans and Jews didn't mix. They were practically rivals. In verse 10, Jesus said, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." This prompts the woman to have a discussion with Jesus, which is most likely longer than what it is only said in the Bible, and Jesus starts to prove to her who he is. It's subtle at first, so it's as if she comes to the conclusion herself. In verse 16 to 17, Jesus says, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. It was as if it was a test to see if he was more than just an ordinary man, to prove her suspicions right. In verse 18, Jesus replied, "The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband." This revealed to her that he knows her innermost secrets. She then realized that he was a prophet, and in verse 21, Jesus declared, "Believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem," hinting to her that he knew her heart had already changed, and that she shared to Jesus her new view, that Jesus is coming, and then he revealed who he was. "I who speak to you am he." So what can we get out of this story? There's 3 main points. Who are you? You have your path, and don't live according to expectations of others. First of all, who are you? Our experiences shape us. We're all individuals. Therefore, we must embrace our story. It doesn't mean we have to be proud of it, just to claim it as our own. The woman hadn't had a perfect past. In fact, she had had 5 divorces. And Jesus knew this, but he did not reject her because of it. This was who she was. And as a result, she was even more open for looking for a different way of life and listening to what Jesus had to say, because she wanted a change. You have your path, and this is different to anyone else's. During her conversation with Jesus, her perspective and opinion of what she believed gradually moved from being Samaritan to being Christian, and he took her on this journey, but she had to understand each step in between. Don't live according to what is expected of you. This would just be like acting out a script set by society and following someone else's plan for you. The only plan that you should follow is God's plan. The woman believed the same as the Samaritans around her, because she lived in Samaria, and that was what she was expected to believe. The failure in her life had opened up her eyes to see God, and that her life wasn't working as it was. She was seeking something different. So don't be ashamed of who you are. That's who God loves you for.
Who do you say I am? I want you to think about this. If you were asked to describe yourself in one word, what would you say? Now, I'm quite sure that there'd be a few responses like this. A teacher, student, doctor, mother, father, or possibly you might even just say your name. But is this what really describes you? Today in society, it is common for people to describe themselves by stating their occupation, relational status, ethnic background, or even their religious views. The disciples were asked a similar question about Jesus in Matthew 16, verses 13 to 16, which says, "When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, 'Who do the people say that the Son of Man is?' Well, they replied, 'Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and some say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets.' Then they asked him, 'But who do you say I am?' Simon answered, 'You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God.'" Peter's answer was simple, direct, and yet tremendously powerful. This was because Jesus was not what the people expected. Even the Jewish authorities, the people who claimed to know more about God, were completely unprepared for the way Jesus came to earth. They expected the promised Messiah to be a strong political and military leader, one who would flee his people from Rome. Instead, they were confronted by this Messiah, who was a humble servant, a man who proclaimed that the kingdom was not of this world, but was of heaven. Now, if we continue reading in verse 17, it says, "And Jesus answered him, 'Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven.'" When we discover who Jesus really is, we are blessed for it, because the answer of who Christ is cannot be found on earth, but comes directly from God. When we find our identity in Jesus, we are no longer trapped by earthly things, but we are above them. We no longer need to worry about the labels given to us by society. We no longer need to have our identity in how much we earn, what we've done, or in our failures. We can look up and define ourselves by the one who has died for us. Today, Jesus is asking you the same question. Who do you say he is? By finding our identity in Christ, we are able to find this answer in the forms of who we worship, who we put our faith in, and who we choose to identify ourselves with.